Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 39. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and on this episode, I have heard your cries for Scott Heisel to return, and just like that, Substream Magazine editor-in-chief Scott Heisel has returned to Inside Music. Now, when we last spoke to Scott, he had just left his long-term job at Alternative Press Magazine, and he had a lot of great memories to share from that experience. But in the last 6 months, Scott has really settled into his position as editor-in-chief at Substream. He's running the print magazine. His first 2 issues with him as EIC are out now. He's working on the third. And in this episode of the podcast, we talk about how he's adjusting to his new job, the changing responsibilities that come along with it, as well as a lot of stuff that just kind of have to do with music in general. We spent about 20 minutes discussing the purpose of reviews in magazines today, which is a conversation that anyone familiar with the show has probably seen us carrying on online for a while now. I think it's a really great conversation for anyone interested in the world of journalism or magazines or just how music is covered today. Scott's a great guest, and I hope to have him on the show a few more times in the future, but I like to space it out because, let's face it, there's a lot of other people we should talk to. The music in this episode is provided by the band Common Rider, which is basically the side project or offshoot of Operation Ivy that no one ever really got behind. The band released 2 albums in the early 2000s, which Scott and I talk about a bit briefly during the podcast, and when we've wrapped up, I figured, why not share it with everybody? If you like what you hear, Common Rider have this fantastic album out called Last Wave Rockers, but it's really hard to find unless you buy it on like iTunes or eBay or Amazon used. If you want a regular copy, especially a vinyl copy, it's going to cost you. Just a little, just 2 cents for you there. Anything else I have to say before we get to the show? Oh! Make sure that you're following Inside Music on Twitter. Yes, Inside Music, the podcast, has its own Twitter account. It's at Inside Music Pod. That's at Inside Music POD. Follow that account so you can get updates on the upcoming guests. We continue the conversations from certain shows, and we also give you a lot of insight into the behind the scenes of what's going on here at Inside Music. It's not just me talking into a microphone to people over the internet. There's a lot more involved, and we're trying to get it all out there through the Twitter accounts. So make sure you follow us there. Also, if you can, subscribe and review the show on iTunes. I know that I asked you this last week and probably the week before that, but it's really important that we get those reviews up. You just hop on iTunes, give us 4 or 5. 5 stars. 5 stars would be perfect, actually. Give us 5 stars, tell people that you love the show, and it really helps us get a lot more exposure on iTunes because there's so many podcasts today. Everyone's fighting for attention. And yeah, I would really appreciate it if you could help me out like that. Anyways, the sponsor for this week is Holix, the internet's leading digital distribution platform. Whether you're looking to get your music in front of the press or you need a little help fighting piracy, Holix has the tools you need. For more information on Holix and access to a free 30-day trial, visit www.holix.com. That's www.haulix.com. Okay? Let's get to the show.
Can you hear the call blowing outdoors? Style communicates the elements of a war. Battle to establish the undivided self. Truth universal is the only real wealth. These are the days and these are the nights. Yours is the rhythm and the hard light. Breathe underwater, float above the ground. Direct hit rhythm section as the set sound. It's a rough redemption. There is no exemption. We will move it all night. False Mantis warriors, mountaintop rebels, last wave rockers, live at soul level. Hard rhythm move, no we not run. We just walk along in a rough redemption.
I actually thought we were going to be in trouble today because after yesterday's internet outage, I went outside this morning and my entire street, like they're tearing up all the sidewalk and replacing it. Mm-hmm. So for like 2 hours, I was just like sitting here waiting for the sound of jackhammers because that's like that's basically synonymous with Boston summers. Yeah. It's like Red Sox, jackhammers, and waiting for football season, like this in that order.
It's funny, actually. I live on a really quiet street, and there's a couple kids here, but it's pretty quiet during the day, and I'm working from home. And then about 2 or 3 weeks ago, my neighbors across the street, they had like some sort of issue with the water pipe, like in front of their driveway. And so this city crew came out and just jackhammered literally all day and dug this gigantic hole in front of their driveway to like fix whatever the problem was. And it was just comical because I'm just sitting here like trying to work from home, and I just in my living room, and just right out the window is just the whole time. So I thought I had avoided it, but I had to live with it.
Are you in Cleveland?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so like what part of Cleveland?
I'm in it's a neighborhood called West Park. It's like Jefferson Park / West Park. It's over on like the western side of Cleveland. So it's not
Okay.
suburbs, but it's like toward the suburbs.
All right, like on the side with the airport.
Yeah, actually, I'm like 7 minutes from the airport. I'm really close to the airport, actually.
Okay, okay.
So.
That's like I know like three places in Cleveland, so it has to be like in relation to the Rock Hall,
Okay.
or the airport, or Melt, basically.
I'm pretty much equidistant from the airport and Melt, and the Rock Hall's a little bit farther. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So how have you been, man? It's been like months since we've spoken.
Yeah, gosh, it's been about 6 months, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I've been great. I've really been awesome. Life's been rad, so it's hard to complain.
It's good. I'm glad that I didn't ask you that, and you're like, "Oh man, it's been the worst 6 months of my life."
You have no idea.
Where have you been? You haven't been here for me.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I wanted to get you on the show because last time we talked, you were kind of like between jobs, and you hadn't really gotten the Substream thing going yet. So, like, I want to catch up. Like, what's been going on in the life of Scott Heisel? Like, what's it like to be the editor in chief and like steering the ship over here at Substream for the last 6 months?
Yeah, man, it's a dream. It really is. Like when I parted ways with AP back in December, Jason McMahon, the guy who owns Substream and has been there for 9 years when it was founded, he reached out to me almost immediately just to be like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on?" And he and I started talking, and it was the holidays, so obviously it took a little while to kind of really touch base. But I met with him a couple times in like this. I talked with him in December. I met with him in January, and he was just looking for someone to kind of take control of the magazine. Substream has been around for almost a decade, but they haven't really ever had that kind of like unified editorial voice. It was a lot of people who were maybe long on enthusiasm but short on strong writing ability, kind of handling it. And so he wanted to kind of let the magazine take the step it needs to take and kind of get out from being whatever it was viewed as to being kind of its own entity. And so, he really sold me on it. And he and I had a lot of similar opinions about where music in general was going, where the music industry is going, like what we think the role of the magazine could be. And it just kind of clicked. I was not expecting to immediately fall right back into being at a magazine. I thought I might go the freelance route or talk about doing management or labels or whatever. But it just kind of fell together. And it's honestly been the best thing that's happened to me in quite some time. I've really, really had an amazing experience just being in charge. It's one of those things where I think I think everyone who's not in charge kind of thinks, "Oh, I could do that. I could be in charge. I could do it." And you kind of get to that point where you're like, you want that opportunity. And I think what happens to a lot of people is they might get that opportunity and they realize, "Oh no, I don't want to be in charge. I want to be the worker bee." Like a lot of people are fine being the worker bee. And I learned really quickly that being in charge is super fucking hard work, and I love it. It's everything I wanted it to be, and I'm very, very stoked about it. So yeah, it's been a great 6 months. We've put out 2 issues of Substream under my leadership, and I'm working on the third one right now. So it's been a great experience.
It's funny that you mentioned Jason because I was actually gonna go right to him because I just saw him. Well, I saw him in April at Launch Conference in Pennsylvania, and I had never met him before. Like I've had like mini conversations. He's one of those times where like, you've had like a dozen conversations with a person, and you still don't necessarily know what they look like.
Oh, dude, I have those. I'm sure you know Mike Cabillos.
Yeah.
Mike Cabillos, I've worked with him for 14 years. I have never heard his voice.
No, I haven't either. Now that you mention it.
No. Yeah, Mike Cabillos honestly might not be real. He could be like a HAL 9000. I have no idea. It's considering how fast he answers emails, he might be HAL 9000.
It's true.
Anyway, yeah, I told you what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was downstairs like the first day of launch, and he approached me, and he's one of those. He's so nice that he says hello in one of those ways where you automatically know you're supposed to know who the person is that's talking to you. Where you're like, "Oh crap, this person knows who I am." And I'm like looking for his name tag, and he thankfully is like Jason. Like he just like spits it out, and I was like, "Okay, well I know that you're not Tate." So you have to be the only other Jason that I know by name. And he immediately like just started praising you. Like no joke.
Oh, wow.
I was just like, "So how's Scott working out?" And he was just like, "Let me tell you, man. He is what we needed." And I was like, "That's so awesome. It's good that I was like, so I'm happy to hear that you're like equally as happy as he is," because he was like thrilled about you in
Yeah,
April.
I really feel like we've both kind of filled a void we each needed. Like it's the hardest thing to do, I think, when you leave a company that you've been with for a long time, or even a short time. I would imagine is that you want to find your worth again. You want to make sure that what you're doing matters, and you want to make sure that you're putting forth effort that's acknowledged, and the people that you want to know that what you do is important. And with him, it's just been like that nonstop. It's been, you know, it's not like it's been like a nonstop praise fest, but it's like he's just been so stoked on everything that I've been bringing to the table, and it had been really so long since I had that level of enthusiasm displayed toward my work, no matter what it was, whether it was putting out records or writing, whatever it was. Like I haven't had someone be that stoked on me as a creative talent in a long time, and that is just like the best kind of the best honeymoon you can ask for, really, in terms of like a new job, which is like, you are doing great work, keep doing it. It's really awesome. So I'm sure at some point he and I will get in an argument about something, but it hasn't really happened yet, so it's good.
I get that. When I started at Holics, it was like Matt, the guy that runs Holics, was very into all the ideas I had, and I had come from this like failed music startup where like ideas were always stifled based on like all of the other problems going on, and it
Yeah.
took me a little while to like get used to being like, oh, someone's excited about what I have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Like it's not just me in my head being like, this is a good idea.
Yeah, and really, I'm sure it's the same way, and it's probably the same thing with whatever the company was that you left too. Like it's just changing. You know what I mean? So whenever, even if you were giving the right ideas at the time, for that company, and they just couldn't see it, the fact that you've left now gives them a new perspective, and then lets somebody else to come in. And like it just, the wheels keep turning everywhere. So it's one of those things where I'm sure, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure that I would assume that AP is finding their new groove with me not being there. So it's like they brought in someone new and they're doing their thing. And so it's like it's one of the situations where it's like everyone kind of redefines what it is their goals are and their motivations are. So it's good for everyone, really. When you find that job that clicks for you, it means that the place you came from probably found it too. I hope.
You hope.
Yeah, I hope.
So you kind of touched on this a second ago. So when things were kind of wrapping up with AP, did you even like have the notion that you necessarily wanted to write right away? Like you wanted to keep writing, or did you feel a little burnout at that time, or like were you expecting to jump? Like you kind of touched on this, but you said you weren't sure you were going to keep writing right away.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously that's what I do.
Yeah, it's
I've
like
been
your
writing
thing.
for God 17, 18 years at this point, since before I was still in high school. But also like just like I was certainly burned out just in general on a production cycle. The challenge of being at AP, or I'm sure with any magazine that's been published as monthly, is there's always a deadline. I imagine, I've never worked in a newspaper, but I imagine newspaper writers have it even worse, because every day you're going to press, and whether you're happy with it or not, you got to get something out there. And it's probably kind of similar to that old quote that Lord Michaels gives, where it's like, Saturday Night Live doesn't go on the air because it's ready; it goes on the air because it's Saturday night, and you got to go on the air. And so that's kind of what it was sometimes at AP, where you're working on an issue and you might not be stoked with the content that you've created, or you're not happy with how you wrote it or how it was presented, or something might happen last minute that changes things, but you got to meet your production deadline. You got to get that issue out there. And so it definitely can be a grind sometimes, just as any production job is, because no matter what, you got to get it out. There's deadlines to meet. So what's been really great with Substream is that it's a bi-monthly publication. So we publish once every 2 months, which immediately lowers the stress pretty significantly on my end, because I'm kind of the only person handling editorial. It gives me a lot more time. So yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do at first. I figured at some point I would be writing, just because it's what I've always done. I haven't played in a band in 15 years, so it would take a little bit of work to get a band off the ground. But yeah, just one of those things where like when the opportunity is presented to yourself and you're like, oh shit, I can still do this. I still have this skill set, and you kind of get that confidence back. So it's worked out. I didn't know though. I certainly didn't know the day after I left AP if I was going to be writing again. It's one of those things where you're kind of like, well, let's see, where the next couple weeks take you.
And I think it's fair to say that I think that's true for almost every writer. Like if a gig ends in one place, you're not necessarily like, oh, I'm totally going to find another gig tomorrow.
Yeah, because that's not how it works.
Not at all. Like you're just like, well, it might be over now. Like this might
Yeah,
be where
yeah,
the dream ends, and I have to be okay with that.
yeah. I better start applying for asphalt shoveling jobs or whatever.
Good to know I don't have any usable skills in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. The speech comm degree is fine. This will get me all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I can still put Excel on a resume even though I'm not sure how to use it.
That makes two of us.
Yeah. I confessed that to somebody the other day when we were actually getting off to the label thing for a second. I was working on like my label accounting stuff, and I was like, I honestly have put Excel on every job resume ever, and I'm so thrilled no one ever asked me to do it because I was always just a writer, and I was like, I can mark it, so why do the numbers?
Yeah, my wife makes fun of me brutally because her job is very spreadsheet heavy and it's a lot of number crunching and stuff like that. And when people ask me what she does, I'm like, I don't know, spreadsheets. Like her job is a very kind of this complex job. But I simplify it to spreadsheets because I do not know how to do spreadsheets in terms of like equations and whatnot. So she always mocks me whenever I'm going to do my label stuff and trying to figure out stuff. She'll always come in and like do the old what's that old bit from SNL where Jimmy Fallon's like, move, I'll do it, and she starts typing away. So yeah, I've been there. I have a Bachelor of Arts, not a Bachelor of Science. I don't need to know this stuff.
Yeah, I never said I was good at math.
I took 0 math classes in college, 0, and I still graduated.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I know, pretty good.
Okay, I want to talk about. So I got the new issue. I got the Warped Tour issue yesterday. I guess that's the newest one.
It is, yes.
I like it. The first thing what I've always thought about cover photos for these Warped Tour issues, no matter the magazine, that I find that always makes me giggle is that it looks so good, and then you open it up and it's like 4 different photos by 4 different photographers that you've spliced together.
Yeah.
So would you say this is one of the more difficult issues you put together every year? Like, is this like the more time intensive one because of like the scope?
I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, I had never had, when I was at AP, we had an art director who was in charge of all photography. And so my responsibility was never to coordinate that. And it's funny, I should give props to Chris Benton, our art director at AP, or the art director at AP, because he does an amazing job. And his job was always to be like, oh, so editorial wants these 9 people on the cover and they're all over the fucking world. Okay. And so then he has to make it happen and try to get as many shot in one place and blah, blah, blah. And so it's amazing that he would never kill the editorial staff for the Warped issue because we would always pick people that happen to be on vacation in Bali or whatever. It's like, well, we got to get a photo. So it's always a challenge that way. But so for Substream, this is my first time being in charge of the photography elements as well. So, doing the previous issue, that was easy peasy, not a problem at all. Doing Warped Tour was kind of a pain in the ass. You have to kind of figure out where people are and figure out who's available when and get them together. And we had 1 shot in Australia. We had 1 shot in Toronto. We had 2 shot in New York, 1 shot in Philly, and then 3 shot in Cleveland. I think that's right, which is, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just all over the place. Yeah. So, and we used 4 different photographers total, 2 of whom shot 3 each. So like they have like a rough continuity, but it's tough, man. And I have to give props mainly to Mitchell Wojcik, who shot 3 of them, and also Andy Wells, who shot 3 of them. And then Andy Wells did a lot of the composition too, putting everything together. So big props to them because that stuff I do not know how to do. I wish I did. I can get like rudimentary stuff on Photoshop, but like to make things look nice, I do not know how to do that. So God bless good photographers who know how to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was it was a struggle, but it was also exciting to like have that challenge and be like, oh, well, we want to do Joel from Being as an Ocean. Well, he's in Japan and Australia for 2 months. We're like, oh fuck. So just figure it out, and that's been really what's been exciting about it is like you get these situational challenges and you're like, well, how do I solve this problem? And so you just figure out a way to do it, and it doesn't matter if that's how somebody else wouldn't have done it because that's how you did it, and so it worked out.
Yeah, no, it turned out really great, and I love it. The continuity is what really blew me away because I remember that AP has done some that have like a theme to them, like they're all astronauts one year. I remember that cover, and that was like, so I can only imagine that that's even more of a pain to orchestrate. Like they need to all look alike too. Yeah, you
have to rent clothing or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, move it around.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that had we had more time and a bigger budget, like the original concept for that was, you kind of get it from the tags a little bit from the content is that I wanted to do a play off The Usual Suspects, the movie, and I wanted to have more of like a police lineup kind of look, and we just ran out of time. I would have loved to be able to do more stuff like that, like having actual kind of a more mugshot kind of look, and with like placards and stuff. And we tried to do it, and we got like halfway there, and the clock ran out, unfortunately.
So how did you choose who makes the Substream Warped issue? Because I imagine that for starters, you want to not have everyone that any other magazine is covering, right? You want to try to like corner your own set of artists to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. For me going into that, it was when I reached out. I put together my kind of wish list, and when I would reach out to the people who work with those bands, I would say, we want to do this, we want to have them on our composite cover, but we need to make sure that if we're doing that, they're only on our cover. We don't want them to be on four other Warped Tour covers this summer because we want it to mean something that they're on Substream's cover, that we're getting behind that artist. So, there were people that we approached because of that couldn't agree to those terms, which is a bummer because there were some artists that I really, really love that we didn't get to work with for whatever reason. That's how the music industry is sometimes. But I'm super, super thrilled with who we do have. And the funny thing is that like the bigger bands on our cover, not a problem at all. Done, locked in. It was kind of like the ones that were kind of like the smaller or up and coming bands that were like, oh, this would be really cool. And they'd be like, well, we're not sure if we can do that. I'm like, all right, then I'm moving on. Like, I can't hem and haw and wait for you to decide what the value of my publication is because I know what the value is. And so, it's one of those things where it's like, I'd rather just work with people who want to work with me. And so we were able to put together a really cool cover that I think is very diverse stylistically. We have everyone from August Burns Red to Pup, which is a pretty wide spectrum, And the thing is, I think all 8 of those bands represented on the cover are great bands. And I think they're all must-see bands on Warped Tour. And I don't think any of those bands are playing into trends. I don't think any of those bands are gimmicky. I think those are all real bands that people can actually relate to, which is really what I think the focus of Substream is now. It's like, let's cover what's real and not focus on style over substance. And so that's really what I want to do with Substream and make that the mission statement.
Yeah, I think you're pulling it off because I definitely, the first time I got the Aaron West cover, so when I picked it up, I was immediately like, oh, cool, Pup and Knuckle Puck. I mean, I'm not as big on Knuckle Puck. I know kids are way into that band, but Pup is a band that for like the last year, I was like, this band deserves to be huge.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like that message is coming across because I was immediately like more interested in checking it out because I was like, oh, we're talking about like the next generation now. This isn't just like the bands that are going to have 10,000 kids every day.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to shoot Soupy as Aaron West and not as Soupy from the Wonder Years because, everyone knows the Wonder Years. And it's, they're a huge band and I love the Wonder Years. Don't get me wrong. I will be there when they play Cleveland on Warped Tour. I can't wait to see him and hear new songs. But, Soupy has this whole other thing he does, which is totally different from the Wonder Years and has, a whole story to it and has characters. And if you even notice, he's wearing a Buffalo Bills jersey on the cover photo, which plays into the whole Aaron West character. If you listen to the lyrics on the record, there's a lot of references to the Buffalo Bills. And so it was a conscious choice for us to be like, this is new, this is different. And even though you might know his face, like this is something that's you should check out and it's special. That was kind of the whole idea behind that.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that you took he's arguably like the most recognizable of the bunch next to Shane probably, and you put him in the back of the photo. I like that.
Yeah, it's because he's Aaron West. It's not we want it to be like a representation of his new side of himself that people should explore. So and I was really that was one of those things too when we were talking about putting together the covers and having the composition and these are debates that you never really think you'll ever have until you're like, oh, well, shoot, we do have these people, and who do we put where, and who should be on which cover, and should we mix everything up, or should we have all the older people on one cover, the younger people on one, like who should be where? And there are so many scenarios and so many potential cover mock-ups that we went through, and I'm really happy with what we did because, we have a lighter one and a heavier one genre-wise, but we also, for the large part, it's newer and older. The other cover is largely skewed to bands that have been around a long time, like Census Fail and Silverstein and August Burns Red. And then you have kind of Being as an Ocean as the kind of newer representation there. But even they've been around for, 5 years. But then the other cover is a lot newer artists. It's all bands that have one record out. It's a lot kind of more exciting stuff that's happening right now. And that's what's cool about it, And I also love the fact that we could put a woman front and center. I think Mariel from Candy Hearts is a really strong female role model and it can make a lot of impact with girls at Warped Tour. So I was all about placing her, front and center, giving her that spot to really show people that, hey, like women can do this too. This is not cute dude Mudley. This is women are very much a part of this.
Yeah, I have yet to see Candy Hearts. That's like my cross to bear.
Really?
Yeah, I've yet to see them, but I love them. I think the song Michigan is one of the best songs I heard all last year.
Yeah.
The song's great. So I'm excited to see them on Warped Tour. But I know like nothing about that band beyond just having listened to their music. But I definitely, I think she's a good person to stand out because I feel like especially like last year Warped Tour, like they always have a good few female performers, but it tends to be the pop leaning ones that get a little bit more notoriety for whatever reason. So I think having Candy Hearts on there, you're like, no, they're just girl punk artists too.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, they're doing the tour in a van. You know what I mean? Like they're not a tour bus band. They are slogging it out in a van. If you, I've been following their exploits on Snapchat because they have a Snapchat. I think it's Candy X Hearts is their Snapchat. But yeah, they're crammed into a fucking 15 passenger van, and that's as someone who's done Warped Tour before in a bus. Warped Tour is hard as shit. As someone who has seen many friends do it in a van, it's brutal in a van. So they're not, there's no major label money being thrown behind this band. There's no whatever. Like they're a punk band. They might play poppy songs, but they're a punk band in ethos. And it's cool to have that out there and represent that, and not have it be all about Breakdown City or whatever.
I would absolutely hate to have to do Warped Tour in a van. Like having done it on a bus, I would never. I don't think I could ever do it in a van.
It's. I mean, I have to imagine it's the most brutal thing you've ever done. I mean, like, it's just because not only is it like 2 months and you're driving everywhere, and some of the drives are just absolutely insane. Like when you're doing the West Coast stuff, those drives are ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you have like it's 120 degrees every day, and just like oh god, never. I would never do Warped Tour in a van ever. A bus was hard enough.
Yeah,
So,
I remember when our air conditioning went out in Atlanta, it was like 107, and I wanted to die on our bus. I can't imagine being like in a van.
oh, God, that sounds terrible.
Or like getting off stage and not having like somewhere to go that has air conditioning running 24/7. Like that's the reality of like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
solid.
basically. Yeah, you sweat. You wake up and you sweat, and you go to bed and you sweat, and you sweat when you eat, and you sweat when you drink. It's just everything's sweating. So
Yeah, you can never drink enough water. It's amazing.
oh yeah, it's crazy. I remember like going through when I did Warped Tour. I did Warped Tour 2008, I think it was. It was the year that Angels and Airwaves was on Warped Tour. So it was Angels and Airwaves and like Reliant K and Gym Class Heroes. I think that was 2008. And I just remember like I consumed so much water, and still like it was never enough. Like you never even go to the bathroom because you're just drinking so much water, but you sweat it right back out.
Yeah, that's the thing. You never go to the bathroom. That's the weirdest part.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. So,
I'm glad that we both have that like we've been on a bus would never do it in a van thing. Because I remember even like a weekend of being on the bus, I was like, I can't even imagine being in the van. I would just no.
yeah, and then I did Taste of Chaos before too on a bus, and like that was miserable for all the opposite reasons because it's just cold. Everywhere you go is freezing cold, and like and I joined Taste of Chaos. I did the year that it was Deftones and Thrice, and I joined the tour a few weeks in because we were kind of rotating people in and out for AP. And I remember by that point on my bus, it was like a slave ship, so there were 19, 20 people on my bus. Everyone on the bus, A, was already sick, and B, they all hated each other by that point because it was like mid-tour, so everyone's just on each other's nerves or whatever. And so I remember coming in there being like the new kid transferring to a new school and just looking around like, oh, everyone's got like bronchitis and everyone wants to murder each other. So it was a rough go of it, to be honest.
I can imagine.
And then some asshole stole my hoodie. That's what got me even worse. Is that I like took my hoodie off one night to like do something at my booth. I turned around, and someone stole my hoodie, and I'm like, why would you steal someone's hoodie? That's not cool. So I had to go get a new hoodie so I wouldn't freeze to death.
Are you excited about the new Taste of Chaos? Do you think maybe
Dude,
you guys will do something with that?
I would love to be a part of it. The lineup is ridiculous.
It's
like,
ridiculous.
It's awesome. It's a little weird that it's called Taste of Chaos because there's some very non-chaotic elements. Like I would never associate the All American Rejects with chaos. But it's cool that there's still some bands from the original incarnation of it, like Thrice and I don't think did Glassjaw ever play Taste of Chaos?
I'm not sure. I asked myself the same thing last night. Maybe once, like one of the very early ones.
I know Story of the Year did. I know Thrice did. I think Finch may have at some point. I know that band Adair played all the time. So it's cool that there's still like that kind of basis of it. But I love the fact that it's like Dashboard and Jimmy Eat World and All American Rejects and Saves the Day. And like that's if I can get out to California in October, I might just want to go to that and the other one. The It's Not Dead Festival are just fucking ridiculous. Both those times are amazing.
It's Not Dead. I forgot all about It's Not Dead.
Yeah, and like I'll tell you what, man, we posted news about that on Substream yesterday, and those have been our two biggest stories all week. Were those stories? It's insane. Like people care so much, and even like the It's Not Dead one right now has done almost 3 times as much in terms of more than the Taste of Chaos story, which has also done a ton of traffic. So like people are so stoked on these, and the lineups are so good that it's just great that Kevin Lyman could finally do that and be like, here, you bitch about Warped Tour being whatever it is, here is this. Shut up. Which I have to imagine is like part of the motivation, which is like, stop complaining. Warped Tour's for kids. This is for you. Enjoy it. You know.
If there's ever a chance for an Op Ivy or Common Rider reunion, it's not
Oh,
Dead Fest.
oh, don't tease me. Don't tease me. That's the rumor right now for Riot Fest too. Is that the rumor for Riot Fest is either Jawbreaker or Operation Ivy.
I would die.
Like I mean that gets rumored every year. I interviewed Jesse Michaels from Op Ivy a few years ago when he was putting out that Classics of Love record, which is fucking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I was like, what are the odds? Like, is it ever going to happen? And basically, he's like, no. He's like, why would I want to do that? He's like, I wouldn't want to subject our band to the music industry now. He's like, when we were a band, it was so real and so honest, and we broke up before anyone cared. And to bring that back now, where it's a world of tour managers and line checks and guarantees and late shows, who wants to do that? So I feel like that's a little bit less likely unless he has some crazy bill that comes up that has to get paid. I don't know. I think Jawbreaker is probably more likely, but I think they're both like 15% versus like 7% if they're going to happen. But I'd love to see them both. Don't get me wrong. So Blake, if you're listening, I'm into it.
I tried to do a Common Rider, their first record. I wanted to press it again for Antique, and I reached out, and they were so not uninterested necessarily, but they were just like, oh, we don't. I mean, they're like, I don't know who even has the masters, or it was just like that was a thing that happened before, and we've moved on. Like we've all moved on. Why haven't you? And I was like, but haven't you heard this record? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like I want to live in the past some more. Let me live in the past. Come on.
Well, I feel like, I mean, Op Ivy is one thing. Common Rider, I was always like, they could have been so much more, and they never got the chance.
Yeah, I never saw Kamen Rider, actually. I don't think I ever got to see them play. They were only around for a couple of years.
Yeah, they did two records, and then they were out.
Yeah, so, yeah. We'll see. Maybe that'd be funny. Honestly, it'd be really funny if Jesse Michaels got them back together and not Op Ivy. That'd be really entertaining.
Just to screw with people.
Yeah, it'd be like, this is the reunion you've all been waiting for. Jesse Michaels is back with Kamen Rider. And people are just like, God damn it.
Yeah, and they're not even playing the first album, which everyone loved. That second one that was like weird and new wave. Yeah. This is what you want.
Here you go, yeah.
Just take it. Yeah, that would be hilarious. And I wouldn't put it past Riot Fest to be like, yeah, we're into that idea.
They're all about trolling people.
Yeah, exactly. How was you guys were real involved in, was it Spring Fling? Is that what that was called? Last month in May? How did that go?
It went awesome. I mean, it was a great lineup, you know what I mean? The only bummer was that Crime and Stereo had to cancel like the day of because their drummer couldn't make it or something. I don't know what the deal was, but everyone else, played and was great. And it was, Story So Far and Movie Life and Pentimento and Gates and 4 Year Strong, Me Without You. It was great, man. It was probably, I would say, around 2,000 kids were there, if I had to guess. The building that it was in is like a multi-stage building, like a multi-venue building. And so there was like a huge theater, which holds, I think, roughly 2,200 or something like that. And then there's like a smaller side room that holds like 500. And then there was like a little hallway stage they kind of erected. So there were a lot of people there. It was very busy. We loved being there in terms of like presence, like people, got to meet a lot of people and introduce Substream to a lot of people who hadn't heard of it before. So we were really stoked about that. But it was great. I mean, so many awesome bands. And the people who put that together, it's a company called Bravo Artist, which is based out of Cleveland and Columbus. And they're just a big promotions company that putting on a lot of shows in Cleveland and Columbus and are doing a great job. And I really can't wait to see where they take it next year because I feel like it's only going to get bigger. And hopefully we can still be involved with it. So.
Yeah, that was like your first big involvement since you've got with Substream, wasn't it? Like your first
it was
big thing.
It absolutely was, yeah. And so we have more coming too. We're actually sponsoring the Today's Mixtape Festival, which is in Long Island in August.
Yep.
And that's like Every Time I Die. I think Movie That's playing that too. It's Real Friends, State Champs. I think Straight from the Path is playing, Iron Chic. So it's a bunch of awesome like kind of Long Island bands, and so we're going to be going out for that too. And that's what I want to kind of do with Substream is kind of get us to those festivals that aren't the massive ones, everyone wants to sponsor Riot Fest or sponsor or Lollapalooza or Bonnaroo or whatever, you know what I mean? Or even Warped Tour to an extent. But I like having these more kind of localized fests that kind of better encapsulate what a region is into and bring Substream to that, where it's like, this is stuff that we care about and we want to spread on a national level. So let's go there and make sure these people know that we're kind of on their team, like we're not trying to just be like an infiltrator. So that's what's really important to me is kind of finding those smaller festivals that still have a real sense of community about them, which I think that Today's Mixtape is definitely one of those for sure. It definitely feels like it's been around for I think 4 years, and they always have sick lineups. It's all sorts of bands have come through there. So I'm really stoked about sponsoring that too.
Are you guys sponsors for Fashion Meets Music? Or are you involved in that one at all? I know that's
We
kind of
are,
up your
yes,
alley.
yes, we are involved with that too. We do have a sponsorship package with that too. So that's really cool because that's like the nice thing about that is that there's a diversity in what they book. You have everything from Young the Giant to Taking Back Sunday to what's that band called, People Mover, that weird band.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so they're really doing a lot of cool stuff there too. So we'll have a presence there too, and that's in Substream's backyard. That's in Columbus, which is where Substream was founded. So we'll definitely be there in September as well. We're excited about that.
Yeah, Holix is we haven't really revealed it, but yeah, we're doing that for Holix as well. So I'll be out in Columbus
Oh,
that
cool.
time of year. Yeah, I'm excited. Ludacris, are you kidding me? I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I do the small fest thing too. That's kind of been when I was at South by this year. Like I love going to South by, but while I was there, I was talking to Jesse Richmond, and I was like, what I'd really like to do for like the rest of the year, like I'll go to Riot Fest probably, but I want to cover and like highlight more of the small fests that have like something unique to offer, because like that's what I'm curious about. Like I want to go
Yeah.
to like you said, like the regionally supported. Like I'm going like Detroit has Don't Call It a Fest, and they're getting like a See You Next Tuesday reunion in September.
Oh, wow.
And like who cares about a See You Next Tuesday reunion? but yeah, Michigan does.
Yeah.
So like like something like that really intrigues me, where I'm like, okay, so this is like a festival made for like maybe 3,000 people. Like
Right.
that's like the total target audience. Like that's way more interesting to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because it's just it feels more special. It's not trying to be something for everyone. It's just trying to be what they believe. It's what they want it to be. You know what I mean? So it's not like trying to overextend its reach essentially. So I can certainly get behind that.
What do you guys have with Warped Tour? People can get subscriptions and all that jazz on Warped Tour. I
Oh
assume?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, we should.
It starts today, so I guess we should bring it up.
That's true. Yeah, Warped Tour starts today in Pomona, so we will be on the tour for almost the entire summer. We're dropping off a few days at the very end, just to logistical stuff. But we'll be there pretty much the whole summer. We're going to have bands signing at our booth all summer long. We have all of our cover stars signing. So you got Silverstein, Census Fail, Being as an Ocean, Candy Hearts, Knuckle Puck. All those bands will be signing at our booth, as well as some other really good bands. Like we have Man Overboard doing some signings. We have 68 doing some signings. We have Beartooth stopping by for a few. It'll be really cool. So we'll have that every single day at Warped Tour, which will be exciting. Plus, we'll be selling, we'll have cheap subscriptions, cheap magazines, cheap T-shirts. We're giving away free bags. So yeah, come to the Substream tent every day. We'll be tweeting out where we are every single day. If you go to twitter.com/Substream, you can see all of our details there. We'll post this up on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everything. So, but yeah, come out. It'll be really exciting. So, we have this awesome girl named Rayanne who's working our booth all summer long. She will happily make you a deal. So come on out and bring some money. And that's my shill for the day. So
I like that. I like that. Okay. I like that you brought Man Overboard, because that reminded me. One of the things I really want to talk to you about this episode, not necessarily that band, but I wanted to talk to you about how you go about reviews for Substream, because like my big torch in 2015 has been like, I hate when I open a magazine and there's like 20 reviews and 18 of them are like 4 or 4.5 stars and above, and I'm like, I'm just like, there's not every album released this month or in the last 2 months has been like an 8 out of 10. That's just not possible.
Yeah.
And I noticed in the last two issues of Substream, you guys have a 6, you've had a 4. So like, I don't know, what is your view on that? Like, it seems like you're not like, some seem to just be doing lip service when it comes to like the review section, whereas it seems like Substream, you're actually trying to say something about the music.
Yeah, it's a challenge in general, just because reviews in today's world are almost pointless, which sucks to say because I am a reviews guy and I think you're a reviews guy too. But to most people, I think people don't read reviews to discover new music. They read reviews to see if their belief is agreed with or disagreed with, and so they can get mad about something. They heard the new whatever record and they love it. So they're going to go read a review of it on Pitchfork to see if Pitchfork likes it, and if they don't, they'll get mad about it. I think rarely, at least in my circle and my sphere of influence, I feel like a lot of reviews don't necessarily turn people on to music, which is it sucks, because that's the point, is to be like, this is really good, check it out, or this is really bad, don't check it out. But we live in a world now where all music is instantaneously available to your phone. Like you can hear it yourself. So if you want to hear the new Cancer Bats record, you can just go stream it and done. And it doesn't matter what we say about it, whether we like it or not, because you've already made up your mind. You've already listened to it. That said, I think it's important to have a critical discussion about music. And I feel that even though the market that AP appealed to and the market that Substream appeals to, which is still widely younger people, like high school and college age people, even though they might not be as well versed in music history as people in their 20s and 30s and older, or might not have as much eloquence to just in terms of what they're writing, it's still important to have that outlet and to express why you like what you like or why you don't like what you don't like, because it makes you a better critical thinker. So I've always tried to push that level of it, regarding the whole thing about music being good or bad, and reviews having high scores or low scores. It's I've been on both sides of that fence, because there were certainly months at AP when I was the music editor, which I was for 8 out of my 10-year run there. I was in charge of the reviews. And so there were certainly months where everything got a good score. And it's like, well, what do? Do you purposely change scores to make it look like things aren't as good as they are? And, I came at it from a different perspective, which is I would not try to assign music that I didn't think already had some level of inherent value. So I'm not going to sit there and assign some band's demo tape, because it's going to get torn to shreds. I'm not going to sit there and assign some awful, sub broken side garbage, because it's, we all know it's bad. There's no challenge in saying this sucks, because we all know it sucks. So I would hope that if I was choosing to assign a review, that it carries some value already, that people have tried to create something, And so then my mission as an editor is to find a writer who can best analyze what it is they're trying to create. Which is why when I hit up my writers and say, hey, I'm looking to have these things reviewed, what do you think? Like, what are you into? Pitch me on something. Because I don't want to just assign a review to a random person, because they might not get it. I remember one of the biggest pet peeves I ever had was when I first started at AP, and our old reviews editor would assign stuff out, and he assigned Emery's The Question and Cartel's Chroma, 2 albums of which I think are great, really for their genre, excellent albums. And he assigned them to a writer who primarily covered like punk rock for us, like Screeching Weasel, NoFX, whatever. And she didn't like either one of them and gave them both bad scores. And I was just like, wow, why would you do that? Like, why would you assign, a super shiny pop punk record to someone who only listens to like the Ramones? Like, there's no crossover there. Like, obviously they're not going to connect with that. And so I would rather find the person that's the right fit for that. And that way they can say, like, okay, I like this stuff and this is good, or this is not good. Because what benefit is there to have someone who doesn't understand the music not understand the music? So that's always been my kind of thing, where I'm trying to find the right people. That said, I totally tell my writers, I'm like, if something isn't good and you can eloquently tell me why in 150 words, do it. I have no problem running bad reviews, especially at Substream. I think it's important to not blow smoke up everyone's butts, but that's just my personal policy at Substream. I can't speak to other magazines anymore. So
fair enough. That's fine. Do you have any that you regret? Because I know you've given some pretty low scores in your day. I always wonder if critics ever like look back and they're like, I think maybe I was too harsh on that band.
What's funny? Even just like I was doing a podcast. Here's my other plug. I have a podcast. It's called Best Midwestern.
It's new since you talked about starting it last time.
Yes, yeah, it's true. So it's called Best Midwestern. It's Facebook/Best Midwestern, Twitter/Best Midwestern. You can search for Best Midwestern on iTunes. And I do it with my friend Greg. And we actually recorded an episode 2 days ago. We were talking about Motion City Soundtrack, and we were talking about the new single, and then we did a whole retrospective of their first album, I Am the Movie, which I love. And he found my old review that I wrote for that in 2002 on Punk News, and he's like, you only gave it 3.5 stars. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, I blew that one because that record rules. That record's awesome. And so even something like that, you're like, man, why did I give that such a middling score when I could have given it higher? I'm sure if I were to go dig through all the reviews I wrote during my tenure at AP, there are reviews that I no longer agree with. Whether I would either give them a higher score or a lower score would depend on the record. And that just happens because, your tastes grow and change over time. But certainly there are things that I probably graded too generously, based on who knows what, based on whatever was in my brain that day, based on their bass player being really nice to me or whatever. That's the kind of stuff that kind of works its way into your subconscious without even realizing it. Like I remember when I was still writing for Punk News years ago, I reviewed the second Midtown album, Living Well is the Best Revenge. And I gave it like a 4-star review, which I do not stand by. That record's not a 4-star record, in my opinion. It starts off really, really good, and then it falls off really, really hard, and then it picks up around like track 9. But and I regret that. It's just like you're like because I wrote this review and I was like, they're so nice, they're such good people, and I'm like, that's bullshit. Like that doesn't matter at all. Like you're not reviewing the artist, you're reviewing the art. And so those things you learn over the years, trying to focus more on the actual quality of what's being created versus how nice the person is who created it. It happens.
I will never. I think it was you. Didn't you? Are you the one that gave the first Alesana full length a half a star?
Yes.
And you said that they should sell their instruments.
That might have been a different band. That was A Change of Pace.
I remember reading that first Alesana for on Frail Wings for AP,
Yes,
and it has
yes.
half a star. And I remember reading that, and I was so proud. Not even I agreed with the review at the time, but it encouraged me to be okay with being like, oh, you can say something hard, you can feel this way about a record and tell people about it.
Yeah, it's and I will say that over the years, my super negative blast reviews were whittled down. I wasn't not that I wasn't allowed to do them, but it wasn't smart to do it. Just because it's kind of asshole-ish.
It's a game you have to play.
Yeah, and that's and especially at that level, AP was a huge company and still is a huge company, and you have there's a lot more politics involved with that. Whereas Substream, it's me and Jason, and so he's not going to sit there and say, well, you should give this a 7 as opposed to a 6 or whatever. Like he doesn't care. You know what I mean? He's not micromanaging my review scores because he trusts me. He knows that what I'm going to do is put out a product that best represents what Substream is, artistically and creatively. So that's where we are with that. Yeah, I think the review you're thinking of though is actually a band called A Change of Pace, who were terrible. They're fucking atrocious, and they were on Immortal Records. And what's the name of their fucking album? I can't even remember. The cover art had like a kid sitting in the corner with a dunce cap on, and they were just a shitty screamo band. They were just a super shitty pop screamo band. Their very first song on the album was a complete direct ripoff of "Cross Out the Eyes" by Thursday, like that riff, like it was a complete rip. And so I ripped them apart in the review. I'm like, this is garbage. I was like, I wrote like a letter to the band. I was like, you're young, you're just out of high school, probably haven't gone to college yet, so take my advice, stop being a band. Break up. Sell your instruments, go to college, get a good job, retire when you're 65, golf on the weekends, move to Florida, but for all this holy and decent, do not be in this band anymore. And that was the review, and it ran pretty much unadulterated, and it got a lot of feedback. I was harassed by the band members for a long time via instant messenger on AOL. They were not super happy with my words, so that was fun. Had a nice run-in with them at Warped Tour one year. But whatever, that's what, when you're 22 and you're full of piss and vinegar, that's what you do.
I respected it. I thought it was hilarious because
Yeah.
but I think you're right. There's also a part of you that I think I still hear music that I feel super harshly about, but my desire to necessarily like put the pen to paper and like explain why it's so awful is not as like, it doesn't have the same ferocity that I used to have about it, where I'd be like, I have to tell the world about the wrongdoing.
Well, yeah, and the thing, it's different now too, because 10, 15 years ago, a bad review could lead you to avoid something because you wouldn't go spend $15 on it at a store. That was the point of a review in the punk sense, and like in the punk zine sense, whether it was Maximum Rock and Roll or Punk Planet or Hit List or whatever. Everyone had these capsule reviews, and it was basically being like, this is good, mail order it, or this is not good, don't mail order it, because that's how you got your records back then. And so it served a purpose to be like, don't spend your money on this, you're not going to like it, trust me, But now we're in the world where if you read a bad review of something, like a really just eviscerating review, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to go on YouTube or Spotify and listen to it to see if it's as bad as they say it is. You want to see if they're right, And so it's almost doing the opposite intention, which is, the purpose of writing a bad review is to say don't listen to it, but because we live in a world where everything's so convenient for music, it immediately makes you want to listen to it. It's almost like saying don't touch the red button. You're going to touch that fucking red button because it's right there.
No, I hadn't really thought about it before like that, but you're absolutely right. Like, and also I think like, you made a point earlier where it was like you would read the review to figure out if you should buy it, but now I guess you could see it as some people might read the review and be like, oh, this person hates the band that I love because there's the access that they have to the same material right away. They could be like, no, they're stupid. I love this record, so now I'm not going to visit this thing or buy this thing anymore because they don't like the thing I like.
Exactly, and there's this weird backlash in recent years toward people who review music, which is how dare you? How dare you insult this? It's like, well, I don't know this because I don't review films, but do film reviewers get that kind of negativity thrown at them where it's like, how dare you insult Godzilla or how dare you insult Jurassic Park 7 or whatever? Like, do people care that much about what film critics say in terms of like negativity? Because I feel like with music, it's nonstop.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes it depends on the movie, but like what film has that music doesn't necessarily have yet, or at least not as prominently, is that like when someone doesn't like a movie, they can quickly hide behind like a social issue they take with it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people that don't like Jurassic World, they don't have to be like, oh, I don't like Jurassic World because the story or whatever. They can be like, it's sexist, and then like the conversation kind of hits like a roadblock.
Right.
Where you can't be like, well, then why? So you hate it because it's sexist? That's stupid. Then you're telling them like sexism, all blah 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 blah.
Right.
With music, they can't be like, well, it's racist, and then you'd be like, oh, well, I guess it's racist. You know what I mean? Like that happens. Like I run into that with film all the time. Like I'll walk out of a screening. I walked out of a Dope earlier this week, and me and one guy liked it, and another critic, we looked at him and was like, what did you think? And he was just like, meh. And we're like, why? And he's like, seemed kind of racist to me. And the end of the conversation, you know what I mean? You can't be like, well, you're wrong. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't racist.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, I guess we disagree on what racism is then. Okay, well then, that's kind of where it ends. But in terms of like actually posting it, they only hate it when people take like an angle that can be viewed that way. Like that guy that wrote "Women don't understand don't appreciate Goodfellas." Like that's when you get hate.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. It's like I don't think you understand the movie, but whatever.
Yeah,
But,
true.
I mean, with music criticism, it's like music criticism has devolved to such a thing where I think that film reviews definitely still matter. I think that if a movie is truly eviscerated by the critics, it tanks. I think that, or at least relatively. I mean, there are some times where it overcomes it just based on star power or whatever alone, but there are plenty of movies that are built up as being this massive blockbuster, and then you see the Rotten Tomato score of like 22%, and no one goes because everyone can look at that and be like, oh, well, literally everyone says it sucks, so it probably isn't worth checking out. But I feel like the difference there is because it costs money. And so like that's the thing with music. Music is free now. Everyone knows that. It's free or very, very cheap. And so you can easily make up your own mind. And not to mention, there's so many different elements. Like no one looks at a record like as a movie. Like a movie is one story with, video and sound and whatever. It's told for a purpose and it's not real and it's meant to entertain. Whereas music is not ever created in that same manner, or very rarely is it created in that same manner. Music is created, at least on our level, the level that you and I deal with, is created as an outlet. It's a passion project. It's something that means something, or sometimes it's more commercial, but it's never like a 90-minute rom-com or a popcorn flick. Like you're not meant to sit there and laugh at a record. You're meant to absorb it and learn lyrics and blah, blah, blah. And so it's such an interesting way that because I feel like music has always been designed to connect with you on such a deeper personal level, and because it's free now, that no one cares what critics think because who cares? Like it doesn't cost you anything to prove them wrong. Whereas with a movie, if I read a review, like Sam Cohen, your friend Sam, wrote a review for us for Jurassic World where he gave it 1.5 stars, and I'm like, damn, I want to see this movie. But I'm like, in order to prove him wrong, to say that I like it, I have to go drop $12. I'm like, well, maybe I don't want to do that. Like $12 is a lot of money. So that's that weird challenge with writing, I think, with criticism.
No, you're absolutely right. And something that I think another thing that film has that music no longer necessarily has because of things like Bandcamp, and it's a give and take on good or bad, is that like a good review can literally like make or break a film's potential to make money still. Like if like a festival hit, like a film like The Overnight with Adam Scott that comes out next week or whatever on VOD in theaters, like that only succeeds if it has the positive word of mouth. Word of mouth still matters to an extent in film. We saw, like you mentioned, a blockbuster that comes out, like Tomorrowland is a movie that everyone thought was going to be huge, and then all the critics were like, I don't really know, and then no one went to see it, and Disney lost $150 million.
Wait, that movie already came out?
Yeah, it came out like 3 weeks ago.
Had no idea. I wanted to see it.
See, there you go.
It looked so good.
And everyone was like, and it went right past you.
Son of a bitch.
See, but I mean, like Disney has already reported at least 140 million in losses, which is like crazy. But
that's nuts.
It proves that like there's still that critical pull there. Or like I have indie, like whenever I start coming up to a festival, like there'll be bands that'll be like, come catch our set, but a filmmaker will be like, I'll send you my movie before we even get to the show if you need anything. Like there's still like a fight, like a scrappy fight between up and coming filmmakers to try to get the attention of press, because like a well-placed review, even like I've had reviews that end up on movie posters, and that doesn't happen in albums anymore. Like it's rare to buy a record and there have like a quote on the front of it from somebody. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it still happens in film all the time. Like it still matters so much there, and it's weird.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes total sense. It's like even like book reviews. Like book reviews still matter. Like if you get written up in the New York Times, it means something. It means you've gotten somewhere. And that's kind of what I've always thought, going back to music reviews, like that's what I always looked at, and I've had publicists tell me before at AP, was like, even if we get a bad review, we got in there. Because there's so much music coming out nowadays, and the process of sharing music has been so democratized, where everyone has the ability to get their music literally everywhere in the world. I mean, I run a label, I use my stuff through TuneCore, I put a release up there, and it's in fucking Israel and Egypt and Australia, and I mean, and we get music, people buying and streaming our music in foreign countries I have never been to, and it's wild to me. And because of all that, like, there's no ability really to like separate the wheat from the chaff. But when you get something into a print magazine, that's what carries the weight still, which is why I think print still matters, because everything is online, but only a small amount of stuff can actually be in a print magazine because there's, physical limitations. So by making it to a print magazine, it immediately justifies what you've done. Even if they give you a negative review, you were at least notable enough to have ink and paper used to communicate that, whereas there are plenty of things that will never get to that level.
Exactly. And that's something, that's why I wanted to ask you to talk about reviews with you, because that's why it always bothers me when I see something that's like every single record gets unanimous praise. I'm like, why are you dedicating so much? Like, why not just dedicate this whole section of the magazine to like blank magazine recommends? Because that's essentially what your review section has become, is like, here are the bands we back in hopes of, the fans of those bands still continuing to buy our product.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge, and to me, it's like there was a lot of pressure sometimes about reviews, and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like no one buys a magazine to read reviews. You know what I mean? Reviews are there, in my opinion, for people who subscribe, because people who subscribe want to consume new music in every possible form, every month or every 2 months or whenever you publish. Like that's the whole point of what like that's why, in my mind, that's why people subscribe to magazines, because whatever it is they're into it so much that they want to make sure they never miss it, and so they want to get whatever that update is every couple of months. And so that's what, in my mind, reviews are there for people who subscribe, who are constantly wanting to consume new stuff, wanting to be turned on to new stuff. People who buy a magazine at newsstand or buy it in Barnes and Noble or buy it wherever, they're buying it because of the cover. They like the cover artist. Like, we learned over the years at AP that no matter what you put on the inside, no matter how cool it was, if the cover artist didn't connect with your audience, the issue didn't sell that well, just because that you live and die by your cover star. And so, we had issues where, I remember when we did Johnny Craig on the cover at AP, which was a big debate, and it went back and forth for a while, and we ended up doing it. And I'm really happy with the way it came out, but that issue just tanked. Nobody wanted to read about Johnny Craig because he had burned all of his goodwill. You know what I mean? That was after the MacBook thing and all that stuff, and he had gone through rehab, and like people were just like done with this guy. Whereas there was so much cool shit in that issue. We had this huge special in there that all the editors were super proud about, and all this stuff. And it's like, it didn't matter. Nobody saw it because nobody bought the issue. Subscribers got it, and subscribers loved all the interior content because that's what they're paying for. But like newsstand is very much like, if I like this band, I'll buy it. If I don't, I will not. And it doesn't matter what else you tag on the cover. Nothing else, in my opinion, sells a magazine besides what's on the cover. So,
yeah, I hadn't really considered that before. I'm always curious when you see like those redemption stories, because it's like it's the big story to like have the person talking about whatever the thing is that happened to them. But It's usually at the tail end of like having burned all of the bridges that they have.
Exactly. And so it's a risk where it's like, do they have enough public goodwill to get that? And you know, I think we learned that lesson from that one. And then we also, when we had the whole Tim Lambesis thing, when he was being sentenced for the whole attempted to, hire a hitman, blah, 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 we did that online. And that was the biggest story on AP's website for a very long time, and very well could still be. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been there for 6 months, but that story was massive. It was like a bomb went off on our web server. And I mean, it was just huge, and that's because that's how people want to consume that stuff now. They want to know immediately how that celebrity or that whomever is making contrition or whatever their scenario is. They want to immediately have access to that, and having to go to a newsstand to pay money for that does not interest people. They don't want to have those apologies cost them things. People want apologies for free. They'll pay for like the crazy story, like when it's time. So like when we did Motion City Soundtrack on the cover years ago at AP, Justin Pierre had gone through rehab and for like drugs and alcohol and all this kind of stuff, and he told his story, and it was very touching, and everyone loved it, and it was well received. But had it been a situation where he had like burned the band, like a tour had been canceled because of whatever, he had a problem or something like that, and then like we tried to put him on the cover after that to like apologize for it, nobody would have bought it, because everyone wants to have that apology, that acknowledgement of fucking up for free. They want to be given that. You know what I mean? That's where that difference is.
Yeah, definitely. You teach me so much every time you come on the show, Scott, about the realities of running a publication. Because I come from the online world where it's just like, well, we'll write whatever the hell we want.
Yeah.
And if people like it, then they don't. And it doesn't really matter because it's just a front page that changes constantly. Yeah.
Exactly. There is no cover. Yeah, exactly.
There is no long-term planning, really.
Yeah. hit reload and it goes away.
So so you have the Warped Tour issue with Substream right now. Warped Tour is going on. What is, you can't tell us the cover star, but like when is the next issue? Like, how's the next issue coming together so far?
It's challenging. Well, no, we already have our cover figured out. I have pretty much everything mapped out, but like literally this morning I get an email that one of the bands we were going to be doing a feature on this issue is actually pushing back their record indefinitely because they can't tour on it until next year because of a school conflict. So it's like, well, fuck, we'd already shot this band and we had already had a writer. And so now it's like, I gotta, once I get off the phone with you, I have to go juggle all this stuff and figure out how to fill a hole. And that's what publishing is. It's like, the best laid plans will still always go awry. It doesn't matter. And it's still exciting though. It's piecing together an issue and kind of finding that jigsaw puzzle that makes sense and make sure you cover what your core readership is into, but also what you want to turn them on to. So whether it's doing something on Defeater or doing something on Citizen or doing something on The Main, like, okay, like those are all bands that are different aspects of punk and hardcore and whatever. But how do you convey it in a way to be like, it's okay to like all this stuff? And I feel like honestly nowadays it's easier than ever because it's mixtape culture. Everyone listens to everything. In the past 2 weeks, I saw Murder by Death play at Cave in Louisville, Kentucky, and then I saw Taylor Swift. And that's okay. That's totally okay to see both those things in like a 4-day span because it's okay to like everything nowadays. There's very little stigma, I think, nowadays in being a fan of pop music while also being a fan of underground music, Whereas before, there was a very clear line in the sand that was drawn. When I was growing up, you did not like pop music. If you started liking Green Day and The Offspring, you no longer liked En Vogue. You no longer liked Boyz II Men, But nowadays, everyone likes everything. So it's made it a much more interesting landscape to write about because even though you like everything, do you want to read about everything? And at Substream, even though probably a good half of our readership at Substream loves Taylor Swift or they love Katy Perry or they love, whomever, do they want to read about it? And the answer is probably not because that's not the role we're meant to fill. We're meant to fill the underdog. We want to bring new things to light. So that's what I'm focusing on with Substream is things that haven't gotten their fair share or a good look, in the mainstream culture, and how do we kind of elevate that to a spot where they feel like they're, they get what they deserve, basically.
All right, I like the sound of that. I wanted to thank you because, for coming on the show, of course, but I had never checked out Choke Up until this week, and that video they put out for Woke Up Drunk that you guys premiered is awesome.
So good, right?
That band is so good.
Yeah.
in general. But yeah, anyone listening to this, Substream did the premiere for Woke Up Drunk. It's a fantastic video. And it's a cool exclusive because it's through Vimeo, which means it's not on YouTube. So not everyone is just copying, pasting it everywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure people still are, but whatever.
Yeah, it requires like 3 extra clicks to do so, though, which is a big enough wall for like 80% of the community.
Yeah, who knows? It's one of the things I've learned in the past few months is that like no matter how much hard work I put into something for the website, it takes one asshole to be like cut, paste, done. And honestly, that happens with big sites too. I see my shit ending up on really big websites, and I'm like, and it's not like one of those things where it's like I know everyone reported it. Like, no, I reported it. I found the story, whatever it was, and to see it end up at very big websites without like a citation or an acknowledgement of where it came from. I'm like, fuck you, buddy. Like, I don't work for you. Like, you should, give credit where credit is due. And it's you don't want to get like an ego about that kind of stuff. But it's like people are listening and they're out there and they're running websites. The least you could do is cite where things come from because we're all in this together at the end of the day. So let's try to be nice to each other, and that's not steal. No more stealing. So.
I think having your awesome news story is like stolen as a rite of passage in online music writing. So
well, that's the thing is, I mean, it means you're doing something right. It absolutely means you're doing something right. But just like, man, like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, I put a lot of hard work into finding that Cody Payne mugshot, So
I mean, it's weird because sometimes you will get cited, and it'll be for like the most ridiculous thing that maybe you found the point on Twitter and you made a story out of it, and then you'll get like the link from Rolling Stone. But then when you actually put in the effort, never happens.
Oh yeah, never. What are you gonna do? It's the internet. What are you gonna do?
It's yeah, that's life in blogging.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the funniest thing ever is that like the biggest story on our website since I've taken over in February, the biggest story we've ran was this random video I found of some dude that turned a Marilyn Manson song into a ska song. Like he took the vocals from a Marilyn Manson song, but then made a ska track to play underneath it. And I was like, this is pretty funny. This will fill the website for today. Post, and it's our biggest story of the history of the website. And nobody else ever. It was only via Facebook. Nobody else ever like reported it because it wasn't news. It was just like, here's your dumb video for today. Watch this video, and it just caught fire. So it's hilarious that like I could put so much effort into like the super hard hitting news story, and it gets 500 views, and then I can post Marilyn Manson ska song, and it gets 100,000. So what are you gonna do?
It's true. I almost hate to look at the stats some days because I'm just like I know whatever's number one is dumb because I know whatever the thing is I wrote and spent a lot of time on has like no traction yet. Yeah. So you're like it's gonna be something pointless that I spent 30 seconds on.
Yep. And to me, that's the same way as like when you ask a band about like you ask Jimmy Eat World about how they wrote The Middle. They're like, oh, it was the last song we wrote. It took 5 minutes. Or like when Newfound Glory wrote My Friends Over You. The big story about that is like, oh yeah, that was like the last day of production. We're like, oh, let's write one more song, and that's what they wrote. It's like the biggest things are usually the ones that take the least amount of effort, which is just hilarious. So
and you cannot have that outlook on life, or else it doesn't work out.
I know but that's the thing is you have to put in all the effort to eventually have that one moment of where you're just exhausted. Like fuck it, here's this, and then everyone loves that one thing. So you have to expend all your reserves before you get that no effort bump.
I think that's probably a good place to cap this because that's the best advice anyone's going to get, especially for working in the music industry.
Yes. So if they took the time to listen for an hour now, they took a whole hour to listen to this bullshit. There's your advice. Stop listening.
There's your takeaway from this whole thing. Stop listening now. Go ahead.
It was all a waste of time. It's all a waste of time.
Yes. So where can people keep up with you? I know that we've already talked about where people can get Substream and stuff, but like if they want to keep up with Scott Heisel, where can they do that?
Yeah, I'm very active on Twitter. You can follow me at Scott Heisel, Heisel. I run the Substream social media accounts too on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Instagram. So I'm always posting stuff on those, whether it's videos at a show or photos or whatever kind of stuff. So I'm always on those things. I have a label called Youth Conspiracy Records. We talked about that before. We just put out a new split 7-inch rather, between a band called Meridian, who are from Cleveland, and a band called Pinch Hitter, who are from Australia. That was pretty fucking cool to have a transatlantic or trans-Pacific, I guess, trans-Pacific split 7-inch. So you can go to youthconspiracyrecords.com to see what we put out there. Have a podcast called Best Midwestern, which publishes every other Friday. You can go to Facebook/Best Midwestern, Twitter/Best Midwestern, or email us at bestmidwestern@gmail.com to talk to us that way. I think that's everything. I don't know. Do I need to plug anything else? It's probably everything.
Real quick, is it true? We're about to do our first split for Antique. Is it true that they're basically zero profit endeavors?
Oh, I mean, just 7 inches in general. There's zero profit endeavors. It's
Sure.
you'd be better off piling up $1,000 and lighting it on fire. But it's great. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where like the songs were so good, I couldn't not do it. I mean, like literally, like if you want to get like the nuts and bolts of it, like my cost per record is like $475. Like
Oof.
just cost, and that's not wholesale. That's literally like what it cost me to fucking produce the goddamn record. So it's like, what do you sell it for? Like $6? So then you're making $1.25, but then you had to buy a mailer and packing tape and a label and drive to the post. Like you lose money on every single record, but it's worth it because that's what it's all about, man. It's like, I don't put out records to make money. It's a happy byproduct sometimes. I put out records because I like the songs. So and that's life. If I was in life to make money, I wouldn't be in the music industry. So I'd be a banker. I'd be an insurance salesman,
Yeah, we've had a couple of things fail and some things that didn't sell as well. And I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and we were talking about like co-owning their label and everything. And they're like, "So you guys just split everything?" And I was like, "We don't split anything. We make records, and then we both have a name attached to some debt."
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Exactly. So I just put in a credit card payment yesterday for my label credit card, and I think right now only $4,000 in debt right now on that credit card.
That's about where I'm at.
Yeah, that's not bad. It could be a lot worse. It was a lot worse for a long time. So it's only so if you want to help me out with lowering my debt, I would really appreciate it. Go to youthconspiracyrecords.com and buy all my records, and I will send them to you with a bow on top.
And that's 7 inches out now, you said?
Yes, it is. The Meridian Pinch Hitter Split 7 inch, and all of our stuff's on iTunes and Spotify, and we put out some Weatherbox records, some St. Hood Reps records. We did the famous Weatherbox Personnel split. We did the band Foreign Tongues, who are now on No Sleep and have their new album coming out in a few months. We did their first 2 7 inches, which is really cool. They're a great band from like New Hampshire, Boston area. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. Check it out. We're on Bandcamp, youthconspiracy.bandcamp.com. So you can go hear our music for free too. So.
All right. Well, that's thanks so much for coming on again, Scott. I like chatting with you. Hopefully, we'll actually get to hang. Maybe Fashion Meets Music at the end.
Yeah,
of the song.
it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible.
Yeah. I mean, I assume. Are you going to cover Riot Fest?
We don't know yet. I'd love to. Right now, I want to make sure we can get down to the fest down in Gainesville. That's my next goal. I'd love to do Riot Fest. I'd love to do this fucking Taste of Chaos and It's Not Dead. There are only so many hours in the day and only so many frequent flyer miles I have. So we'll see. We'll see where I get this fall, but I'll certainly be around.
All right, man. Well, you have a great day. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, dude. Have a good week.
Cool.
There is no exception. We will move it all night. Just kicking back, fucking around with the girls. I don't smoke weed, not trying to save the world. I ain't got too little and I ain't got too much. Transmission rise and fall, life come rough. People come together, demonstrate the sound. This is unity music, so lay your burden down. Test your ambition, but don't try to test my skill. Cause I'm thinking about all the people I've had on the suckers I've verbally killed. It's a rough redemption, there is no exception.